Should the Sabres bring back Lindy Ruff? I'm on the yes side. I'll tell you why. Coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here, coming to you also on YouTube. If you want to check out our show on YouTube, you could do it there. And be sure to hit us up on our text line. You could do that if you're not signed up already. Go to joinsubtext.com/lockedonsabres. The topic of today's show, already going back and forth with some of our listeners on our text line. I got some text to read a little bit later on in today's show. Lindy Ruff. All right, I'm ready to talk Lindy Ruff as his former team, the team that he was coaching earlier in the season, is in town to play the Sabres on Friday night. Sabres and Devils coming your way on Friday before Sabres and Leafs on Saturday. We'll talk about those two games a little bit later on in today's show. If you want to follow me on Twitter at Sneaky Joe Sports to do that, or you can follow the podcast account at Locked On Sabres as well. We'll get Jordan Greenway in the lineup after some question of whether or not he would play on Friday, and otherwise the lineup's pretty much chalk. Slight change to some of the lines. We'll have that for you a little bit later on in today's show. We'll start right away with the coaching staff. It is the topic that is front of my mind right now because I am thinking a lot about Lindy Ruff as of late, and I'll get to Lindy coming up in the second segment of today's show. I really like the idea of bringing him back, and I'm kind of putting aside the fact that we love him, the fact that he is the all-time winningest coach in Sabre history, the fact that he's the last coach that found any success with this team. I'm ready to put all that aside for other reasons why I think Lindy actually makes sense to replace Don Granato. But to get to Lindy Ruff, you have to first see a coach change from the Sabres in the first place. And that is where we get right now as we approach the end of the season with Don Granato. I threw out there on our last show, is there a result down the stretch of the season that could be so poor that it would get Granato fired? Is his job on the line a little bit at the end here? Whereas if they had an embarrassing end of the season, could that cause them to make a change at head coach? Well, what you've heard a lot of, and I've been one that's thought this too, is I don't see the Sabres making a coaching change. I don't believe that they want to pay Granato an extension that he hasn't even coached a single game in yet. I don't think that they want to lose a guy that has the ability to, help recruit players here because he's beloved amongst players around the league, or at least on this team, and he's respected amongst players around the league. I think there are reasons. There are good things he's done. Turning Tage Thompson around, right? Putting him at center in the first place. No other coach in the league probably would have done that. Getting Jeff Skinner back to being a reliable goal scorer in the NHL after 2 seasons of nothingness after he had signed that contract. Getting Rasmus Dahlin to be a Norris Trophy level defenseman for at least some time, and then the other times he's a very good number 1 defenseman. He got Dahlin back on track. How about others on the team? Alex Tuck had career highs. Dylan Cousins became a great player under Don Granato. Casey Middlestat will get paid by the Colorado Avalanche because of what Don Granato did for him. He was on the taxi squad, Ralph Kruger's taxi squad. He wasn't even on the real team when Granato took over as head coach. So you've got a lot of success stories, individual success stories, but you do not have the overall team success. And Granato, of all coaches all time that have coached the most games without ever making the playoffs, he's on that list. He's very high on that list. So it's time. It's time to do something. And you've got a narrative starting to shift. You have got local media talking about the idea of Granato being moved on from by the Sabres. And now you have got the national media taking their cues a little bit on this topic. The TSN insider trading guys last night, Thursday night, talked about Granato and his current job security with the Sabres. And if you look at exactly what they said, they basically said that they don't see Granato getting fired right now, but of course that can always change. You got to soften the blow a little bit, right? That report isn't going to come right out and say, oh, they're going to fire Don Granato. So they did say, don't see Granato being fired. And then there was a but. And then there was some more talking that eventually led to this would be a tough decision to get rid of Don Granato. But the Sabres know they have to be a team that's not afraid of tough decisions. That line of thinking starting to get thrown out there a little bit by people in the know. The fact that it's a realistic idea enough to talk about maybe means that we are tracking towards Don Granato getting fired. I still tend to think if I was a betting man, than I am, that I think Granato would be the Sabres head coach night one of next season. But my doubt is starting to creep in a little bit as to whether or not he will be back. And maybe Terry Pegula has seen enough that, hey, I gave you 3 full seasons plus another half a season in the COVID year. Enough's enough. I gave you your chance. I gave you your contract. You can get paid and you can go do something else. That is not crazy to me to think that Terry Pegula could think. I do believe, and this is a question I get asked a lot, is it more of a Kevin Adams decision or is it more of a Don Granato decision? And my belief is that while Adams has plenty of say in the matter, no doubt, he is in those meetings and he is an important voice in those meetings. Terry Pegula has to sign off on it. It's a Terry Pegula decision. The owner has got to want to do it. Or, of course, I don't think Granato is going anywhere. So that's where I'm at with the current status of Granato. But it is interesting to me that a little by little, the talk is starting to change. The wind is starting to blow away from no chance, they'd never do it, not even worth talking about. Now you feel that breeze. That breeze is, well, maybe they could do it. It's not impossible. With that gets me to thinking about the next coach. If we can have that conversation, and really before I move off this completely, I'll take a timeout in a second here. One other point on this before I move off and get to Lindy is that Don Granato getting fired is really the only thing the Sabres can do this summer that is meaningful. I don't really know what else there is to do. They have not a lot of spots available. They have a third-line center role that's probably available. They have a fourth-line winger role that's probably available. And if I'm and I have another spot that's available probably in the third line, but if I'm promising one of those to one of the 3 forward prospects, Rosine, Kulik, and Savoy, all of which could be ready for the NHL next season, I got one spot for those 3. I don't have much else to do. I'm going to have a rookie. I'm going to have probably a new center down the middle somewhere, and I'm going to have a new fourth liner. And I think that's probably it. You're not getting substantial change to the roster this summer. You're not getting the GM changed. The only thing of substance, of real substance, I think that you could see as a big shift by the Sabres this summer. Kind of someone who's going to fall on the sword for the season that we just had. And I think Granato is the obvious answer. Changing the coach. Hey, let's give this roster another shot. This combination of players with a few tweaks, another chance with a different head coach. I think that is the only thing that could happen this summer that would be truly meaningful to the Sabres next season. When we come back, why I like the idea of bringing Lindy Ruff back. I'll try to convince you if you're not already on board when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented here by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. If you are tired of all that shouting, Fox Sports, ESPN, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel for your every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the yelling. Check it out on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sabres and Devils, Friday night, 7 o'clock. The Sabres and the Leafs, Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Both games at KeyBank Center. The former coach of the New Jersey Devils and of the Buffalo Sabres, Lindy Ruff. Why I like this idea a lot. And let's start with this season, by the way. The Devils are in town, and Lindy got fired 12 games ago. In the 12 games that the Devils have had since Lindy Ruff got fired, 6 wins, 6 losses. They've played no better with Travis Green as the head coach than when Lindy Ruff was the head coach. And that's not surprising. I sat here on this show the day Lindy was fired by the Devils and told you it wasn't his fault. Their goaltending is what sunk them. Last year, they had good goaltending, and they were a 112-point team. This year, starting goaltender Vitek Vanecek had a really tough start to the year and then got injured and has been injured for most of the season. And the Devils have never had the goaltending since he got injured to sustainably win. They just didn't have the saves. And I'm not saying everything Lindy did was perfect. I mean, there are criticisms of how he handled young players, how he handled lines that were questionable. But last year, he handled young players incredibly well. He did great. He took the second youngest team in the league in New Jersey to the postseason, to the second round of the postseason, to a 112-point regular season. Lindy Ruff has done this everywhere he's gone. He has had 3 stints as a head coach in the NHL. Of course, the Sabres was the really, really long one, over a decade. Everywhere he's gone, he has got to the playoffs. Now, listen, he doesn't have a cup. He has not won the Stanley Cup. But the Sabres don't have the right at this moment to worry about the Stanley Cup. That's down the road. That's another step forward. Right now, it's about ending this freaking 13-year playoff drought. That is got to be goal 1. And then we'll worry about the second one, which is getting forward into the playoffs and getting to Stanley Cup contention. You got to get to the playoffs first. You got to get back to credibility. You got to get back to being a real team in the NHL. And this is how you do it. You make the postseason. Lindy made the postseason with the Sabres in year 1. Lindy made the postseason with the Dallas Stars in year 2. The Devils, it took a little bit. Actually, excuse me. The Stars, he made the playoffs in year 1 also. Year 1 with the Sabres, year 1 with the Stars. It took till year 3 with the Devils. So that one, it did take him a little bit longer, although that first year with New Jersey was shortened due to COVID, although I don't think they were going to make it anyway. So he's got playoff success everywhere. And this is why I truly like Lindy for the Sabres job. It has not everything to do with the heart part of it, right? The emotional ties, the fact that everyone loves Lindy. And Lindy loves this team. Lindy loves this city. Every chance Lindy gets, he will tell you his biggest regret of his NHL life that dates back to 1979. The man has been in hockey in the NHL for 45 years. and he will always tell you his biggest regret is that he didn't win a cup for Buffalo. But that's not the reason why I want Lindy back, is, the idea of unfinished business, the story that it would be. I mean, I'm not even saying winning the cup, but Lindy's final chapter of his NHL book, coming back home to fix it. His final challenge is, I'm going to fix the Buffalo Sabres. Lindy would be into that. And he's not probably going to get another job. 64 years old. The Devils, it went okay, one playoff season, and that was a great season, but it didn't end great, I guess. The GM didn't seem to like him, but whatever. I don't think he's getting a fourth job, personally, unless it's here. So it would be his final chapter, his last stand in the NHL, and it would be the place where he'd want to do it, is to get this team back to credibility. All of that, to me, is a piece, you got to convince a coach to come here if they fire Don Granato. And for all I just laid out, Lindy is the credible, proven winner, veteran, experienced coach that you could get. Gerard Gallant, I don't really think fits. And also, I don't know that you could just get Gerard Gallant. I don't know that you could just get Bruce Boudreau to come out of retirement to coach you. I mean, I'm assuming you could get a guy like that if you really want to, but that Lindy would do it. You could get Lindy to do it. The real core reasons why I want to see Lindy Ruff back as the Sabres head coach. Everywhere he goes, every type of team he has, he identifies what that team is good at, who its best players are, and he morphs his style around that. And that is especially valuable in my eyes after seeing the Sabres go through a season that I would label as confused. From night one, this team has been confused. Last year, they were the third highest scoring team in the league. Run and gun, outscore your mistakes. We are going to score. We'll allow some odd man rushes. And then the season ended 1 point out, as good as they had been during this drought. Then the summer happens. And what really should have been, we don't change anything except we just get a few more saves. We get more saves. We improve the goaltending. And boom, we're in. Instead, an overhaul. Maybe not an overhaul, maybe a little bit strong, but a change. A change to more defensively responsible, more of a focus on playing your own end, fewer chances, fewer risk. And what has happened is they've been confused. They've kind of seemingly been going back and forth to, we want to play a little bit more responsible, to we want to open things up. I say they've been confused all season long. That's how they've sounded. Whenever Don Granato or Kevin Adams has been asked about this, it's never really the clearest answer. Lindy never is confused. Look at the teams he's coached. Start with just the Sabres teams. All the way back, he shows up as Sabres head coach in 1997. And who's their best player? Dominik Hasek. By a mile, by a country mile, he is their best player. What type of game did those Sabres teams play? Lockdown. Let's shut everything down. We're going to try to win 2-1. Our best forward is a Selke Trophy winner in Michael Pekka. We've got good defensemen. We're going to build around Hasek. And you could argue maybe that was the wrong thing to do roster-wise. He wanted to score too. But Lindy knew what he had, and he knew the only way to win was to emphasize Hasek. Then, a few years go by, out of the lockout, the rules have changed. There's more power plays. There's more open ice. It's more conformed now to skill and speed. And Lindy looks at his team and says, all right, well, my best players are Danny Briere and Chris Drury, and I've got Thomas Vanek coming through the door here. I've got my boy Finneganoff. You've got Roy Pominville emerging from Rochester. He looks around at a speed-skilled team and says, you know what? Let's go be the highest scoring team in the league. And that's what they did. In 07, at least. I know 06, they were a high-scoring team, maybe not number one. But 07, they were number one in the league in scoring. They built their team. They played to their strengths, which was speed, skill, and offense. Then Briere and Drury leave. And now Lindy's back to looking at his team and saying, my best player is my goaltender. Ryan Miller is their best player. What do? They go back. They go back to being, I mean, how did they win the division in 2010? They win the division, on the heels of a Vezina trophy level season. I mean, not level. He won the Vezina in Ryan Miller. But that team didn't take a lot of chances. That team was defensively responsible. That was the style they played. He leaves, and I'll go right to New Jersey for last year. What has he got in New Jersey? Last year in New Jersey, that's a young team. That's the second youngest team in the league. Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier. Look at all the skill. Look at all the talent that Devils team had. And yeah, they had some good goaltending for Vitek Vanacek, but the Sabres were third in the league in scoring last year. Guess where the Devils were? Fourth. The Devils were fourth in the NHL in goal scoring. Lindy will conform his style to the type of team he has. And I think he would get here, he would look at what he's got, he would identify what they're good at, and that's the way they would play. And the confusion that you have seen this year would no longer exist. That's why I really, truly like the idea of Lindy Ruff coming back as the Sabres head coach. I trust that he would get that right. And because of what he's done with the Devils in recent, this isn't 10 years ago he did this in New Jersey. Last year, he had a 112-point season with the second youngest team in the league. I trust that Lindy can do it with young players. You know, I could be wrong on that. I know there were some complaints about him on that front in New Jersey, but I look at Lindy and say, yes, it doesn't matter if your guys are young. He will get the most out of them. He will maybe, Jack Hughes called Lindy like a father figure to him. And Hughes said he would not have been as good of a two-way player at this point in his career. He entered as an offensive-only player, one-dimensional. And Lindy has credited Lindy with helping him transform into an all-around number one center. I want to see Lindy behind the bench for the Sabres, and we'd all love it. Imagine night one of next season, player introductions, and then they go to the coaching staff. Imagine the roar, even just in that moment, of how juiced up fans will be to see Lindy back behind the bench. And again, you could have a Disney-level story if things go really well and they complete the story, and someday before Lindy is done, they have won a Stanley Cup and he has achieved his dream of winning the Cup for Buffalo. I don't think that's all that likely that they would win the Cup with him as the coach, but one can dream, right? Time out here. When we come back, my parlay of the day, Sabres and Devils, and then also Sabres and Leafs on Saturday. We'll talk about it coming up here on Locked On Sabres. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, we've got Sabres and Devils coming your way 7 o'clock on Friday night at KeyBank Center. It cannot go worse than it did Wednesday against Ottawa, I think. Line combinations for this game. Jordan Greenway will be in the lineup. There was some question of that. He left the ice on Tuesday with an apparent injury, but he is going to be on the ice, and he'll be on a line with Peyton Krebs and Jeff Skinner. I kind of like the idea of putting some size on this line, maybe open up some space for Krebs and Skinner. I am running out of real estate, though, for Peyton Krebs. I mean, I was a truther. I defended that guy. I thought that he had some ability offensively. And I'm not out on him completely, but I'm very discouraged by what I've seen. And this is a different combination for him, Skinner and Greenway. But above him, the top six in this game, Thompson, Tuck, and Peterka. Peterka will stay up there with Thompson and Tuck. And Cousins will be between Jack Quinn and Zach Benson. New, a little bit different. Peterka, I guess, didn't play with Quinn and Cousins in that last game. I couldn't even pay attention to it because they were getting down. They were getting rocked so early by Ottawa. But we'll see how Benson looks on that line. I bet, though, if Granato doesn't like the combo, you're going to see Peterka get moved back with Cousins and Quinn at some point in this game. Blue line looks the same as it has. And just want to double-check this because it was the case when I started the show. And, yes, Devin Levi is expected to be between the pipes for the Sabres. Got a lot of action against Ottawa on Wednesday. He's going to be back in this game. And maybe gets sent down after this back to Rochester. We'll see. I hope not. I hope he plays 4 games down the course of the season. Levi is a reason why, in our parlay of the day, I am taking under 6.5 goals for Sabres and Devils. I am going to take the Devils on the money line, though, at minus 134. I just cannot trust the Sabres the way they have looked recently. They're so inconsistent. It's so Jekyll and Hyde. You just never, ever, ever know what you're going to get on a game-to-game basis. You know exactly what you're going to get on a 3-game, 5-game sample size, but 1 game, who knows? And finally, I'm going to go Jack Quinn to record 3+ shots on goal. I think Quinn is the shooter of that line. I think without Peterka on it, Benson is a playmaker, a pass-first type of guy. Cousins is a center and a playmaker in his own right. I think Quinn, without Peterka, becomes the shooter, becomes the sniper of that line. And I think that you'll see him get 3 or more shots on goal in this one. All that together, plus 998, 10 to win, 99 or 100 to win 999. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on Locked On Sabres. Enjoy Sabres and Devils as best you can. And if you're going to Sabres and Leafs, it's going to be the best atmosphere maybe left of the season. We shall see. A lot of Leaf fans, of course. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening here on Locked On Sabres the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And again, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today, here for your 24/7, covering the top stories of the day. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app.